Sovereign science is counter research, counter data to colonial or occupied systems of thinking around the environment and everything that then encompasses or utilizes the environment. So this morning we led a workshop as Sovereign Science, but also as the only Lenape at this conference or gathering. One, to kind of ground everyone on Lenape Hoking, let alone Southern Lenape Hoking, but also to ground folks in Indigenous POV through creation story. Sovereign Science is offering a counter to what it means to be a citizen scientist, what it means to simply want to communicate with the environment. Sovereign science is then the Indigenous ways of knowing associated with doing science, whether that be observational, experimental, medicinal, and it's also then the active attention given to those environmental spaces, whether that be through doing data collection or whether that just be from analyzing creation stories to make sure we're moving in life properly.
It's basic observation of the environment, being aware of who your relatives are, being able to say, oh, it's been a long time since I've seen a such and such, or, I think bears are doing something different now, right? Just being engaged in your environment and asking questions that reflect what it is that you're observing, and through your observations documenting about what's happening in the environment. It's also a way of reframing questions that science might have, but do it through a cultural lens. And I think that's important because from our lens on science, a lot of times questions are not framed in that cultural context.
I think indigeneity for sovereign science is also pushing that harder and a little bit further in terms of not only how we document, but also how we report out, right? Not everything has to be a chart or a data table. Sometimes those things are good tools and forms of communicating what the data is or what the mass audience of the data needs to understand. However, I think sovereign science and Indigenous ways of knowing, especially coming from the Eastern Woodlands, there's this role of stories, there's this role of artwork, there's this role of language, there's also this role for emotions that settler science has tried to weave out of people, and we're very much trying to weave it back in. When we think about the knowledge that is cited, how do we, as Indigenous holders and new knowledge creators, make sure that we get cited? Make sure that we're a part of the knowledge continuum and the knowledge that's coming out of climate actions right now, climate studies right now, and land back movements is for more Indigenous voice. I mean, when I think about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, after every single statement and chapter, it was, we need Indigenous science, we need Indigenous learners, we need Indigenous help for these topics, engineers, what have you, politicians. So I think sovereign science, there's one positionality that we're able to help be a part of, and that's publicizing, adding to this open crowdsourcing of knowledge, and in particular Indigenous knowledge where it's wanted to be shared. And I think it's also about keeping the old knowledge new still, and keeping those old ways still new, whether that be through decolonizing GIS and incorporating oral stories through a platform that maybe not is ready for that oral component. In terms of bringing forth sovereign science and the ongoing work to Earth First, there are a few times, I think, throughout the history of Turtle Island where there are clear people who want to be allies that are settlers or visitors. There's very few times in this country so far in its creation that we have the ability to create truly strong and meaningful allyships that are beyond just, oh, well, I made them food. It's like, no, I showed up for a spirit fire. I showed up for a tribal engagement. I was able to create bonds with elders, right? We're living in a phase where the environment has, unfortunately, because it's a painful conduit to be, but as the planet is dying, it's offered this conduit of meaningful allies to be able to step forward. And in many ways, I think the people that come to Earth First, and even those who aren't here but wanted to be, end up being in Turtle Island as those allies.
Yeah, I think Earth First is very much, from what I've observed and experienced, a kindred spirit. Really asking good questions, thinking about methodologies and approaches. How do we gain a foothold on understanding something, or how do we gain a foothold on, after understanding it, getting political action, right? Or getting action from people. I mean, I come away with a really strong respect for the energy that's there, and the willingness to even listen to somebody, like me, quite frankly, and for me to have opportunity to share my lens, and whatever that offers, that it be mined by everyone to find whatever nuggets are there.
I think knowledge making is an act of resistance.
Yes.
And so being able to still be a part of those acts of resistance that are still attached to the land and the usage of and all the other worlds in between, water world and sky world, that's what Sovereign Science is doing, and trying to get other Indigenous folks and I think meaningful, good intended allies to do as well.
The work is important that is being done, and any voice that can lend strength, support, knowledge, the utility of experience, I bring it forward because it's the right thing to do. What's being done is a righteous thing to do, so why would I not?